We're joined by EU Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development, Phil Hogan. Thank you very much for joining us, Commissioner. Commissioner, over the past few months, Ireland and Northern Europe has been severely hit by drought conditions. I know the EU, the Commission, did introduce a number of measures to help countries cope with the situation. Do you think this is a once-off? Is that a once-off answer to a once-off problem? Or is this an issue that you're going to have long-term measures for?
Well, I suppose there's two aspects to it. We've signed up for international agreements on climate change in the Paris Agreement in 2015, where every sector has to play its part. And we see over the last couple of years, with flooding in some regions and drought in other regions, that it's very unpredictable, the weather patterns, and to be able to have the necessary risk management tools to be able to cope with these particular unfamiliar events to us is something that the policy now in the agricultural policy of the European Union has to look at. But what Minister Creed and I have tried to do over the last couple of weeks is to ensure that we can, as far as possible, have enough fodder for farmers next February and March at the end of the winter season. So we relaxed a lot of the environment rules in order to allow more product to be able to be grazed as well as produced for fodder. And we brought forward the advance payments to 70% rather than 50% in October of this year. So hopefully the measures between what the Minister has announced and what I as European Commissioner has announced will be able to mean that farmers' cash flow will improve and that we'll have more product to cut to alleviate a potential animal welfare problem next February and March. Farmers are worried, but I hope that these measures will help to, help to show them that we're making every effort in order to ensure that their animals will have the amount of feed and the amount of fodder that they need next spring.
And just looking at this long term, we are dealing with changing climate patterns, different weather scenarios. It is becoming a more frequent situation. What are you proposing long term that will deal with this scenario on, a couple of times a year? It could be that we're dealing with as this year with a fodder crisis.
Well, I suppose the first thing that farmers want to know is if they're able to avail of financial resources or some assistance like we are in relaxing the environmental rules when times are difficult, and that there is a buffer there and risk management tools available in the Common Agricultural Policy to help them at times of risks, whether that's a natural disaster or whether it's flooding or whether it's drought. So we are looking at in the post-2020 policy to make sure that we have sufficient risk management tools and crisis reserve measures to be able to help farmers in those situations.
And moving on to the Common Agricultural Policy reform, at the moment, Commissioner, are you seeing member states that willing to contribute more? What number are we on at the moment in terms of member states wanting to contribute more to the budget to help maintain the CAP budget?
Well, we've got positive soundings out of 22 member states from a total of 27 member states, so this is very encouraging. Of course, though, it has to be by unanimous agreement to get agreement in the budget, so we're not taking anything for granted, and we have to work closely with the other 5 member states that have a difficulty about giving more money to the European budget. So over the next couple of months, the Prime Ministers of each member state and the European Parliament will be discussing this intensively, and hopefully we'll be able to get agreement by the end of the springtime.
And Commissioner, on the capping of payments, there are some concerns. Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Michael Creed, has raised concerns about the possibility of income tests and labour cost assessments being brought in order to bring in the new capping to the direct payment. What's your response to those concerns?
Well, there's only a small amount of farmers that are going to be affected in respect of my proposal to cap payments between €60,000 a year and €100,000 a year. What we're anxious to do is to redistribute payments in order to give a bit more money to the small and medium-sized farmer in order to keep them in business, keep rural areas viable, and our larger producers are able to get access to financial instruments and be able to deal with financial institutions better than our small and medium-sized farmers in order to get working capital and loans over a longer period of time. So the whole purpose of my proposal, and it's only a proposal, I'm willing to listen to member states like Minister Creed to see is there alternatives that we can actually achieve the same outcome by devolving responsibility to the Minister to pick the capping level, whoever is the minister, to pick the capping level. But what I am really anxious to see is that we protect the incomes as far as possible as small and medium-sized farmers. And the family farmer in Ireland is about 56 hectares.
Under the Common Agricultural Policy Reform as well, on the active farmer definition, Member States will now have the ability to define an active farmer themselves. There are a lot of concerns also on that. What would you consider a good definition for an active farmer?
Well, because the European Parliament and the European Council of Ministers in 2013 were unable to find a definition themselves of what constitutes an active farmer or a genuine farmer, we have decided to give each of the Member States the opportunity to be able to define that particular type of farmer themselves. Greek government and the Irish government have a different view about what a farmer is, and you have to take account of part-time farmers, you have to take account of people that are, have to supplement their income from other sources in addition to their farming. But what we're anxious to do is to ensure that whoever is in charge of the land, that it is farmed, rather than just for investors from outside agriculture. And I hope that each Member State will be able to get a definition that's suitable to their local conditions in that respect.
Commissioner, on Brexit, we're not a whole lot further on than we were this time last year, and the deadline for the withdrawal agreement is looming. What's your view on how negotiations have progressed to this date?
Well, I thought that there was a lot of interesting proposals made by Prime Minister May in our Chequers white paper, especially in relation to agriculture and the trading of goods, including agriculture. And if we can build on those proposals, it means that we will have the type of frictionless trade agreement in agriculture that we're all looking for, from Northern Ireland to Southern Ireland and vice versa, or from the island of Ireland to the United Kingdom and Europe. So the first part of it is going to be decided at the end of October, early November, where we will have to see what the final outcome will be in relation to customs, in relation to checks of goods and where they're going to be checked, so that we can have this soft Brexit and frictionless trading arrangement. And then the second part of it, of course, will be the free trade agreement, which will take a couple of years between the UK and the European Union. And if we get a duty-free, tariff-free agreement, for example, well then we have resolved an awful lot of problems in relation to the trading of goods, like agricultural goods, between the UK and Ireland. So the first part, hopefully we can get agreement. It'll be unthinkable if we can't get an agreement, because it's not in anybody's interest, including the United Kingdom. And then after that we will have a transitional period in order to work out the future relationship and the free trade agreement.
Do you anticipate that there will be any extension to the agreement, to the deadline to finalise?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves now. Let's see how we fare in relation to a final outcome between the UK and the EU by the end of October and early November. This is the first step. It's only if there's no deal or no agreement that some future government in the UK might decide to look for an extension of time or an extension of the 29th of March deadline. But we'll have to get agreement from all 27 Member States. We're not contemplating that at the moment, because I think everybody is doing everything possible to make sure that we have a deal rather than a no-deal scenario.
Commissioner, a couple of weeks ago, Ciarán Fitzgerald, the former chairman of Meat Industry Ireland and the leading food economist, was on FarmLand, and he was critical of the EU and how it has responded to, particularly to the beef sector on Brexit, and he suggested that there should be an increase in direct payments under CAP reform specifically to beef farmers, because they are so severely impacted or will be so severely impacted by Brexit. Do you think there's room there for more practical solutions? He mentioned an early slaughter premium and an increase in direct payments. Is that a practical?
Well, I agree with Ciarán Fitzgerald that we need to look at sectors that are going to be under pressure for any particular reason. And I'm giving that flexibility in the CAP strategic plan to every Member State Minister for Agriculture to be able to do that in the future post-2020. Also, there are support possibilities with operational programmes at the moment in fruit and vegetables and wine. It's exclusively for them at the moment under the Common Market Organisation measures. That we are proposing now, that particular model of helping a sector like fruit and vegetables is going to be extended to all sectors, so that in their planning for the future post-2020, Any member state now will be able to have a specific sectoral approach to help the sector that's under pressure at any particular time. So we're given all the flexibilities along the lines that Kieran Fitzgerald has advocated.
And another help to the situation may be the new proposed legislation that you've brought forward on the unfair trading practices. What stage are you at on that at the moment, and can you give us any update on what's happening?
We're making substantial progress on this issue at the moment, and we will expect to have a conclusion of the legislation between the Parliament and the Council by the end of January 2019, and it will come into effect on the 1st of January 2021. It's a directive, so it's up to every member state if they wish to implement it or not. So, but this is banning unfair trading practices. I presume that every member state will wish to agree with us that that is necessary to do. And already we have an agreement on the general approach from the Council of Ministers, and the European Parliament are quite enthusiastic about making quick progress on this matter with a view to finalising, as I said, early in 2019.
Which will also help alleviate the outcomes of Brexit. Is that central to you?
Well, we want to give more share of the transactions in the food chain. We want to give a better opportunity to the farmers to be able to get a better return from those transactions, rather than processors and retailers gobbling up all of the particular margin of profitability. So there's a lot of unfair trading practices that go on in marketing and on food waste not being paid for by retail chains. We have 9 specific areas identified, but of course we can build on this in the discussions that are happening at the moment between now and the end of January to try and make this proposal better. But this is the first time the European Commission, and I'm very proud of this achievement, that as Commissioner for Agriculture, that I'm able to put forward a proposal in legislation to help to improve the position of the farmer in the food chain.
We'll leave it there. Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome.